For all of my cheesecake loving friends, this is for you. Here's what you'll need. 3 8-ounce packages of Philadelphia Original Cream Cheese, 1 stick of butter, 1 can sweetened condensed milk, 1 can raspberry pie filling, 3 large eggs, pure cane sugar, graham cracker crumbs, pure vanilla extract, 100% lemon juice concentrate, and last but not least, Nutella for the topping. Other things you'll need are a 10-inch round springform pan, 3 mixing bowls, different sizes, a hand mixer with either paddles or beaters, something to melt your butter in, a couple of spatulas to clean the pans, and a couple of measuring cups. To make the crust, measure out 2 cups of graham cracker crumbs and pour into a small mixing bowl. Then measure out 2/3 of a cup of white cane sugar and just put into the same bowl, and using either a fork or a hand whisk, just mix together the sugar with the graham cracker crumbs and just mix them well together. And once you're done, melt the 1 stick of butter and pour that right over the entire graham cracker crumb sugar mixture. And once again, just use either a fork or a hand whisk and take that butter and whisk it in so that the mixture just starts to become a little moist. You'll see that the color starts to darken a little bit, and the consistency changes a little bit. Once this is all blended together, pour the entire thing into your springform pan. Now I usually just try to even the crumbs around the bottom. And you can see with my hands what I'm slowly doing is I'm pushing the cheesecake, or rather the graham cracker crumb sugar mixture with the butter, up the sides of the pan. They call it walking it up the sides. And it sticks there because the butter mixes with the graham cracker crumbs and the sugar, and it helps to make it stick together. And we're slowly pushing that mixture up the sides of the springform pan. And we're going to keep going around and around and around the sides because we want the thickness of those sides to be even, from the top to the bottom. So we're just going to keep going around the sides with our fingers, building up those walls, and trying to get them as thick or consistently thick as possible. Now this just takes usually about 5 minutes total to do, because sometimes some of your sides are going to fall down. You have to rebuild them a little bit. But as I said, about 5 minutes, and I said, is all it takes to make the crust. And we're going to move those crumbs all the way up to the top of that springform pan. And it doesn't have to look really great right now because we're going to be trimming that top later on. Right now, we're just trying to get those sides formed and, solid and the same thickness. Usually what happens is as you're bringing them up the sides, usually the crumbs that are at the bottom of the pan, it's thicker down there than it is up top. So once my sides are formed, I start to scrape away things from the bottom, like you see right there, because that's what I'm going to use for the bottom of the crust. So I'm scraping away from the bottom edges there, just patting gently to make sure it's formed. Now I'm just using my knuckles to kind of scrape away some places that are a little bit thick, shaving it away, getting stuff away from that bottom crust where it's thick. And now I'm just going to take all those remaining crumbs and spread them out at the bottom of the springform pan in order to make my crust. So I'm just using my fingers to gently push them into the bottom of that pan. And again, consistency is important, and we want to make sure that there's no holes because you don't want that batter going through the crust onto the springform. And now I'm just taking my finger and gently going around the top in order to even away the edges of that crust. And we can also do that later once we put the Nutella on if we still have a little bit of extra room. Now we're going to make the actual cream cheese batter. So I took the three 8-ounce packages of cream cheese mix. I put them on a plate. I cut them up into cubes and I put them in my microwave. For my microwave, it was about maybe 3 minutes at power level 2. I'm not trying to melt the cream cheese. I really just want to soften it, bring it to room temperature. So here I'm just going to use my hand mixer on like a medium speed for about 15 seconds as I'm just taking that softened cream cheese and just mixing it a little bit so it gets a little bit fluffy. Now I take the 14-ounce can of sweetened condensed milk and I pour the entire contents into the cream cheese mix. Take a little spatula, make sure you got, everything in the can in there, scrape it on out. And now I'm just going to blend that sweetened condensed milk in with the cream cheese mixture. And again, you can see it's only going to be for about maybe 30 seconds, medium to medium high speed. One of the reasons we don't want to go too long or beat it too fast is because then that means air is going to get introduced into the mixture, and that can cause cracks in your cheesecake, and you don't want to do that. So again, medium to medium high speed, only about 30 seconds or so. And now I'm just going to use a spatula to scrape down the ingredients that are kind of sticking to the sides, moving back toward the center. And then I'm going to take my hand mixer and once again, medium high speed, 20 seconds or so, just to make sure everything's blended nice. Now we have three other ingredients to add. This is 1/3 of a cup of 100% concentrated lemon juice. Then I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of real vanilla extract. And again, it's tablespoons, not teaspoons, 2 of them. And again, please use the real. It tastes much better than the imitation. A little bit more costly, but it's worth it in the long run. So 2 tablespoons there. And now I'm going to take my 3 eggs, 3 large eggs, put them into the mixture. You don't have to separate them. Just put the whole egg in there. And then I'm going to take these 5 ingredients and blend them all together. This actually forms the base for 99% of the different cheesecakes I make, just these 5 ingredients. So once you have this base mixture down, that's when you can almost add anything to it to make it into, whatever kind of cheesecake that you want. But once again, you can see I'm not doing it at a very high speed, and you're going to see I'm not doing it for very long. This is maybe about a minute or so, just to make sure that the eggs, the vanilla, and the lemon juice mix in well with the cream cheese and the sweetened condensed milk. And you can see, once again, I'm just going to get my spatula, and I'm going to, scrape down the bowl to get everything toward the middle. Another 15 seconds or so. Now I'm going to show you actually how to put the cheesecake together and layer it. In the first step here, we're going to take about half of the batter and pour it into the crust of the cheesecake. And again, it's not scientific or anything, you just eyeball it. But about half of it, so that it's, even around the bottom. Now, if this was a fresh cheesecake, I would open up that 21-ounce can of raspberry, and I would use about 3/4 of it. But I made a cheesecake last week, and this is some of that was left over in my refrigerator, so I'm going to use that. Now, the raspberry will stay in your refrigerator maybe about 2 or 3 weeks before it'll start to go bad. So if you have some left over and you know that you're going to make it again, I said you can put some extra in the refrigerator, your leftovers, but do use it relatively quickly. But again, on most cheesecakes, I use about 3/4 of a 21-ounce can. This person, I know they love raspberry that I'm making this for, so I'm going to be adding probably most of the can to this one. And you can see I'm just using my fork and I'm taking, heaping forkfuls and just putting it all over that cheesecake mix on this layer. No rhyme or reason to it. It's not art. And then what you can see I'm doing is with my fork, I put it on the side and I'm just kind of gently going through it, making little lines, because this way the raspberry won't kind of clump as much. So I'm just kind of trying to swirl it through the batter a little bit. Now I take the remainder of the cream cheese mix and I put that on top of the first layer. I kind of gently try to guide it so it's, evenly put on top of that first layer. And of course, you always want to leave just a little bit behind because you want to put it on your finger and take a taste. So cleaning out the bowl is always fun. Now I'm just making the top a little bit smooth with my spatula. Now I go back and I am going to now add my second layer of raspberry. Realize I'm going to have to open up a new can. Up, John just walked in the door, so he's going to do that while I continue putting this raspberry on. And you can see I'm almost up to the top of the graham cracker crust, but not quite there. This way that cheesecake can rise just a little bit, and then when I have the Nutella and put it on top, it's actually going to be almost perfectly even with it. Thank you, John. Now you can see when I open up a new can, I always mix up all the ingredients inside because you have, the raspberries themselves, you have some seeds, kind of like a little bit of a jelly because it's a pie filling, and you want to make it nice and consistent. So I always mix up the ingredients that I can before I start putting it over the cheesecake mix again. Once again, I'm just taking my fork, putting it on the side, making lines, across the cheesecake in both directions, just to swirl it a little bit. Looks prettier that way. I don't know, tastes better that way. Now it's ready to be baked. So put it in a 325-degree preheated oven. For my oven, it's 325 for 63 minutes. Now on the bottom shelf, put a large bowl of very, very cold water. And then on the top shelf of the oven, put your cheesecake directly on top of that water because the water will prevent the cheesecake from cracking. So after 63 minutes, you take the cheesecake out of the oven, and you can see I have a trivet on my counter because it's going to be real hot. You put it on top of that trivet there, and of course take the water out and just empty that. Now I leave it on the counter for about a half hour. Okay, after I take it out of the oven, then I put it into the refrigerator. And I leave it in the refrigerator for approximately 1 hour because I want it to start to chill. And this way I'm going to be able to test if it comes away cleanly from that springform pan. So after an hour, I take it out, I unlock the pan, all right, and I see if it comes away cleanly. It should. I usually don't have problems, all right. If it did not come away cleanly, I would try to use a knife to, scrape away whatever's causing it to stick. But in this case, let's assume that it came out cleanly. So now I'm taking it out of the fridge and I'm going to decorate it. So what I do is I take a 13-ounce jar of Nutella, I put it in my microwave, and I just heat it up ever so slightly. You do not want to try to melt this. You just want to heat it up just a little bit so that you can put it on top of the cheesecake, and you want to then use your knife to smooth it out and make it as smooth as possible, because you need it smooth in order to then actually decorate it. All right? And I'll show you when we're decorating it, you'll be able to tell if you had melted it too much. But right now, all I'm doing is I'm smoothing it over the entire top layer of the cheesecake mix. All right, and you can see it's, pretty smooth because it has been melted a little bit. And I said, we're only talking maybe a power level 2 for 1 minute. All right, maybe even power level, 1 for 1 minute, and then you can test it again if it's, too melted. You know what I mean? I'll tell you what to do in a second. But now that it's nice and smooth over here, and I can tell the consistency is pretty good, I'm going to start to actually decorate it. And I take the tip of the knife and I just start to make little swirls in rows. Now you can see as I'm making those swirls, there's little like peaks that are forming. If you have those peaks, you know it's a good consistency. If it was melted too much, the Nutella would be flat and it wouldn't be able to make those peaks. So if you melted it too much and it's not making these peaks, put the cheesecake back in the fridge, take it out in 15 minutes, and try to decorate it again. Again, if you see the peaks, you know it's a good consistency. Because once they peak like this, what happens is once I'm done doing this, I now put it back in the refrigerator and I chill it for a couple hours so that those peaks form. Now I'm going to be serving it so I can take it out of the springform pan. To get it away from the bottom, I purchased this cake lifter off of Amazon. And you just slide it between the bottom of the springform pan and your cheesecake, quickly lifting it, and you can put it on the pan, or rather on your plate, or in a 10 by 10 by 4 box. This cheesecake is actually served, it tastes best if you take it out of the refrigerator 1/2 hour before serving so that the top gets nice and soft. I hope you've enjoyed this. Bon appetit, ladies.